Hello guys, Tom from AB Motorworks. Today we're going to be doing an installation video showing you how to install coilovers on your caddy van. Today we're going to be fitting a Stance UK coilover kit to get rid of this enormous arch gap, and the suspension is well overdue an upgrade on this van. Getting into unboxing it, the packaging is really nice on the Stance UK kits, really love the design, and in the box is everything you need. Now we've got the coilovers unpackaged, I'll show you what we've got. You've got your coil springs, you've got your shock absorbers, coilover wrenches, new nuts and bolts for the rear, along with the plates for the rear beam. First step is you're going to want to jack the vehicle up in the air. If you have access to a ramp, this is a lot easier, but it is also possible to do on the driveway with just a jack and axle stands. Just before we send the vehicle up in the air, going to pop the bonnet as we'll need access in here later on. Send the vehicle up, giving us access to all the suspension components. Going to want to grab yourself a 17mm socket and whip off the front wheels. Giving us access to the front shock absorbers. As you can see, these are quite heavily corroded and well overdue a upgrade. The shock absorber is also leaking. Same on the other side. Pop the wheel off, giving us access to everything we need. Next step is to remove the track rod end. Going to grab some penetrating fluid and a wire brush. Just give this a quick clean down just to make our life easier removing this track rod end. You're going to want to grab a 19mm socket and remove the nut holding it in place, and use a hammer to hit the hub a few times. Will break off the taper, allowing you to remove the track rod end. Next step is to remove the drop link, lubricate the nut up. This is a 19mm socket again. Simply move the drop link out of the way. You've got your ABS wiring and your brake line here. They simply pop out of the way. The brake line does have a clip on it. Just want to remove the clip and remove the brake line. Next one after this is the pinch bolt on the back of the hub, locating the shock absorber. Cleaned it down. This is also a 19mm. Remove the nut. And you want to remove the bolt as well. The bolt is an E14 socket on the other side, which is a 12-pointed socket. This one was quite rusty and corroded, so before reinstalling it, I'm going to clean all the rust off and put a bit of grease on there to make our life easier in the future. Next thing, going to spray some penetrating fluid around the shock absorber where it mounts to the hub. Then you're simply going to want to hammer this all the way down, freeing the hub up from the shock itself. As you can see, it's moving nice and free now, ready for removal. Back up into the engine bay, so you've got your power steering reservoir there. You can see that 10mm bolt on the left hand side. You also got one on the right hand side, and you have 3 others just at the bottom, 1 in the middle and 2 either side of that. So you're going to want to remove these to remove this plate from the bulkhead. This will allow you to get access to the top mounts, which house the shock absorbers, allowing you to fully remove the shock absorbers from the van. Now we've got that plate off, you can just see in the back under here, that is where your top mounts are. A little bit of leaves and grime in there, so I'm going to blow them out the way, and then you'll be able to see the 3 13mm nuts just tucked in there. Going to ratchet these all the way off, and then the shock absorber will be removed. Now I've got the shock absorber off, I'm going to show you a side-by-side comparison of the new and the old. Our top mount also has a little bit of play in it, so going to be replacing it while we're here. Would also recommend just replacing it if you've got the suspension off, save you a bit of time and money down the line. So I'm going to get to building the coilovers up now. So got the coilover on the workbench. Going to want to get your spring and mount it onto the collars. Make sure the tighter coils sit at the bottom and is mounted correctly. Then you're going to want to place your top mount bearing and the top mount on there itself. Grab yourself the nut that is supplied in the kit and screw it on the top. Before tightening the nut all the way down, you want to make sure your spring is mounted correctly, sat nice and flush with the collars and the top mount. Then you're going to tighten that nut on the top of the shock absorber shaft all the way till it's tight. Now the next step is going to be setting your coilover height. Due to us already fitting one of these kits, we know what we want the ride height set to. We don't want the vehicle too slammed, so we're going to be setting it to about 1.5 inches from the bottom. Going to just wind this up with the wrenches provided. Make sure that is all as it should. Gonna paint mark the collars to the shock just so we know future maintenance we can check these collars, make sure they haven't come loose or moved positioning. Gonna double check the ride height setting and measure it again. Here I'm using a vernier gauge. You can just use a ruler to do so. As you can see, the paint mark there just for reference. Everything is set up and ready to be reinstalled. Got the top mount bolted back up now, and got to put the hub back on and all the other components, and it will look something like this once it has been reinstalled. So now all the front suspension is complete, we're going to be moving on to swapping over the rear. On the rear, you've got a slightly different setup. You've got a rear beam and a rear leaf spring. You can see your shock absorber there. This one is well overdue a upgrade. It is rather rusty and corroded now. You can start to see it is just misting oil. You've got your rear shackles here which locate the rear beam. So we're going to be replacing those. That is included with the kit. You get all those new bolts and the plates for mounting those. On the rear, going to grab our penetrating fluid and spray all of the bolts that we're going to be replacing, as they are quite rusty. This will just make our life easier when removing them. Give it 5 to 10 minutes to soak in there so everything comes off freely and you don't end up snapping any of the bolts when removing any of the components. Going to start by grabbing a 17mm socket on a 1/2 inch ratchet and cracking off all these bolts on these rear shackles that hold the rear leaf spring in. Now all those bolts are loose on both sides. I'm going to grab a transmission jack just to hold up the rear beam in its location. If you're doing this on the driveway, then grab an axle stand or a jack and just keep it elevated and keeping it in its location and save it swinging down when you do remove it. I've got everything laid out that we are going to be reinstalling. So you've got the rear plates here which locate the leaf spring on the back. This gives you the adjustability of the ride height. Your new shock absorbers, those new bolts for the rear, these are the ones we just removed, and all 3 plates needed to locate the spring in its new location lower in the vehicle. Now I've got the leaf springs loose. I'm going to remove these and just slide them out of the way. Same on the other side. Can be a little bit tricky just squeezing it through the gap there, and just give it a little wiggle and it will come out. Before reinstalling these leaf springs, going to give them a quick wire brush down and clean off all the road grime that's built up over the years. Now we've remounted the leaf spring onto the beam with the plates provided. Once these are on, you can see that the leaf spring is now mounted on the bottom of the rear axle. This pushes the axle higher up, giving you that lowered look. One thing to mention, just on the bottom of that plate there, you can see that hole in the middle. There is a washer provided in the kit that you need to pop in there. There is a little dowel that locates that on the rear spring. Got the rear plates fitted on here as well. Moving on to swapping over the shock absorbers, you can see the new and the old shock absorber there. I'm going to give you a side-by-side comparison. So once you push the shock absorber all the way down, it should return to its natural sitting position to show the shock absorber is working as it should. You can see the Stance UK one springs straight back up to its sitting position, and the one on the right is completely faulty. There's even a struggle to pull it back up, so this one's going straight in the bin. Now the shock absorbers are in, we're going to get these all bolted up and tightened down to torque, starting with the bottom bolt, and then we're going to jack the rear beam back up into place, tightening the top one. Once done so, we're going to tighten down all these shackles on the back, holding in the rear leaf spring, making sure it is all located correctly and all tightened down. Now the vehicle's on the ground, you can see the ride height is a lot better, giving the van a better curbside appeal, and the handling will most definitely be improved. We have lost about 2 inches out of the arch gap. We didn't want to go too low with it, as we do still use this van on a daily basis, but it has definitely upgraded the look of this van.